your face. When you clap, you're on the air.
Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center. We're taping here, produced at the Think Twice Radio with Richard Wicca, our illustrious producer. Thank you so much, Richard. Um, Faithful, and we couldn't do the show without him. So I'm Vicki Ross, the executive director at the Western New York Peace Center, and we're continuing on a special show about the prison system. So we still have with us Myles Carter. Hi, Myles. So Myles is a community activist, a dad, a chaplain at Alden, and just a wonderful man of conscience. And Donna Robinson joining us. Hi, Donna. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The regional organizer for RAPP, Release Aging People from Prison, who is so faithful, hardworking, dedicated, and she's been lobbying all day long and still made it for this later show. So thank you, Donna.
Thank you for the invitation.
Oh, we love to have you here. And it's so, so important. And of course, and a special treat, we have Martin Gugino, our famous, infamous Martin Gugino, who's was in the video seen around the world. The video that's been seen more than 84 million times, has his own hashtag and everything else. Being the one, you were the one who was pushed over by the Buffalo police in the summer during the Black Lives Matter civil resistance, trying to get the government to follow the law, actually. So it's not civil disobedience, it's civil resistance.
No, not at all.
And also, so we're on the same basic topic, and it'll go all over the place. It's just a conversation, but we're still focused on the prison system. But I want to say, you know, when we think about releasing, maybe we'll start with release aging people from prison. Why don't we start with that? Because it goes into a lot of other things. We want to talk about Guantanamo, too, and all of that. So we want to talk about the situation for people in prison, who are really in prison, not jail, who are in there and they're going to be in there. So, Donna, why don't you start us off with what do we need to know? What were you saying today? Why don't you start off with that? What were you telling them today?
Well, it's usually like singing jazz music to a dead horse's behind. That's what I say. I've been doing this for a couple of years. The narrative has not changed, but we're trying to change the narrative. We're trying to change the mindset, because a lot of people my age, I'm a senior citizen, we forgot, or we don't think about it as often as we should, about people who are incarcerated and who have been incarcerated since perhaps we were even children. Mm-hmm. For example, in the state of New York, right here in Coxsackie, New York, there is a man who is 87 years old. He's been incarcerated since I was 8 years old.
Oh my God.
I'm 65.
Mm-hmm.
That gentleman can barely get from his bed to a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
For the decades and decades and decades that he's been incarcerated,
mm-hmm.
he has changed his life 360 degrees.
Uh-huh.
This is not the same man that they sentenced.
Right.
He's gotten a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get special permission to get a PhD behind the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you can get an associate, you can get a bachelor's, you can even work on a master's, but a PhD, that's a whole different ball of wax.
Mm-hmm.
He's been married for 50 years to the same woman, over 50 years now, to the same woman. He started programs inside, practicing Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
Even the judge that sentenced him, every time he goes before the parole board, they give him that rubber stamp. Even the judge that sentenced him says, this man in front of me now is not the same man that was in front of me 50, 60 years ago.
So why aren't they releasing him?
Because the nature of the crime. They focus on the commission of the crime. And that's the one thing that never changes.
Right.
I don't care how many decades they lock you up, how many years you spend in solitary confinement. That never will change.
Right.
And every 2 years, when they go before the parole board, which is mainly made up of people of law enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
they give them that rubber stamp, denied, a threat to the community. We have mentors. I call them kings and queens. They have mentored younger people who
Right.
have come in to tell them how to survive.
Mm-hmm.
Valerie Gator, the longest serving woman in the state of New York, incarcerated for 41 years from the time she was 19 years old until she passed away, August 13, 2019, while I was at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility visiting my daughter.
Uh-huh.
Miss Val mentored my daughter when she came in.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter had never been in any trouble. She took her under the wings, and this is a whole nother world, and this is how you have to do if you want to be successful. Get an education, get a job, work your programs.
Right.
Miss Val passed away after being misdiagnosed for 2 years. She said, I can't talk sometimes, I can't swallow. They changed her diet, gave her soft foods. 2 weeks before she passed away, they determined that she had esophageal cancer.
Oh my God.
Medical treatment behind the wall is slim
Fair.
to none.
Right. Right.
And now, with the pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
we have lost 30 people behind the wall, 12 in the past 2 weeks. Another female made her transition from Bedford Hills from COVID. The first woman was Darlene Lulu Benson Say back in April, when our organization and others had came together and we had public health officials trying to get this bill.
Right.
It's not a get out of jail free card. And I think that's what's got people misconstrued.
Right.
We want the individual to be judged who they are today. We all change.
Right.
I'm the same
Right.
person that I was 2 years ago, 4 years. I'm not the same person I was last week.
Right.
So the Elder Parole Act, which is one of our bills, only asks that any individual 55 and older who served 15 years or more of their sentence be given a chance to
Right.
sit before the parole board and be redeemed.
Right.
Basically, who is this person? What have they accomplished? Have they had any disciplinary actions?
Right.
Had this bill been passed, a lot of them would have made it out before they died from COVID. We lost so many elders. We lost one right here at Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
Saleh Abdullah, a man in his 70s, denied parole over and over and over again. He was ready to come home, ready to start a business with his brother.
Uh-huh.
His daughter, who he had left when she was a baby, is now in her 40s, waiting for her father to come home.
Yes.
He went before the parole board for a Zoom hearing.
Mm-hmm.
He was overcome with emotion, I suppose, because I know how I would feel if I had waited 2 lifetimes.
Right.
He asked to be excused to go to the bathroom. They granted him permission. He was gone way too long when they went to check on him. He had
Oh.
a stroke.
Oh no.
A stroke on the bathroom floor, never regained consciousness. They brought him to Buffalo General Hospital, and that is where he passed away. I can't imagine having your hand on the handle of that door, getting ready to cross over that threshold and start a new life, for it to just be snatched.
Mm-hmm.
Because nobody had compassion. Nobody cared about our kings and queens who are incarcerated. These are mentors.
Right.
If we release them back into the community, they can save so many of these young men, these young women who might even be contemplating making the same mistake that they made.
Right.
Because it only takes a split second to make a bad decision and ruin the rest of your life.
Right.
We fought so hard. I'm so glad that you brought up Jalil Muntaqim.
Yes. Yes, and it's on our website. Anybody who wants to get in that, I don't know if they have a limit on how many people can go, but it starts on February 9th. So if you go to the special events calendar to February 9th, it's all listed. All the information is there for a person to sign up and be part of that. Go ahead. Tell
So
them. For
many
people
years,
who don't know. Right.
So many years we fought, advocated, kept him lifted up because his family is not from the East Coast.
Right.
When they denied him parole a couple of years ago in November,
Mm-hmm.
that was a bitter pill to swallow.
Mm-hmm.
Because he is not that same person that he was when he was young. He's older than I am, a couple years older than I am.
Mm-hmm.
But they kept bringing up the commission of the crime.
Well, and political prisoners, I want to say that. Let us talk about political prisoners, which actually...
Black Panthers, yeah.
Yeah, the Black Panthers, the Black Panthers, so many crimes been done by our government and under the, behind the badge, behind the uniform. So I don't say perfection does not exist in this world, but there's definitely political prisoners and people who they're just not letting out. Right. So some of it, I did want to bring up this one thing, because it was part of something we were talking about just before we started. It's not like it's only the criminal justice system that's all screwed up. All of our systems are, have a lot of changes needed and are very, dysfunctional and harmful in a lot of ways. And there's some good things going on too, not to say there aren't. Sure. But it's the nature of the criminal justice system that all the rest of all the problems that come out in the other systems, I think they just filter down into, because that system, the nature of the system, it gets the worst of the worst, along with the military people overseas. Go ahead.
Well, and I think that it's important to point out, I agree with Donna in so many respects that compassion is missing in so many aspects in our criminal justice system. But I'd also go a little bit further to say that it is there for Caucasian people. You know what I mean? Right. I've seen time and time again, I've got white family. I'm half white myself. I've seen time and time again, white people are arrested for the same crime. White people don't even get arrested, for the same crime, because when they get pulled over with drugs in their car, for one, they're not getting searched, not at the same rate that we're getting searched. And for two, if they are getting searched and they do have those drugs in their car, they're probably not going to jail. There was a comedian that did a show on Netflix, and she said that she was dating a black guy back in the early 90s. And she said when they were driving, over the bridge into I think it was into New York City or something like that, they were coming from Jersey, they got pulled over, right? And they had drugs in the car, and her black boyfriend was arrested, and she was pulled out of the car by the police officer, and she was told to go home. So that's the type of stuff that happens, in comparison. So that compassion, it exists, because it just doesn't exist for us. And then you see that, and it's represented in the numbers. That's why black people look like we're the ones committing crimes. That's why black communities look like they're the ones that are, you can't go in because of the dangerous. But, just as many crimes, just as many drug addiction is happening out in the suburbs and the white communities, but they get the better end of the stick when it comes to the criminal justice system.
Absolutely. No question about it. No question about it. And in fact,
I'm sorry, I just wanted to make that point. Because
I'm glad you made that point. And I wanted to say, I think, I was thinking, it's when we were talking in the last show about I was thinking about the criminalization of black people. So this thing of like looking
Yes.
at black people, that's one of the symptoms of racism, is the criminalization of black people. Although in some of the instances that we were talking about, it's more than that. It's not just thinking they're a criminal. It's pretending they're a criminal. It's
Making them
pretending. Or pretending, lying to say, or whatever.
Well,
So the racism is.
I like to share this story
Sure.
because this happens to black people too, because way back when in 2014, I think it was, I was robbed at gunpoint, when I was over in the Central Park area, and my wallet was stolen. I'd never been robbed at gunpoint before, so I didn't really know what to do.
No,
my wallet was
sure.
stolen, and I called the police.
Right.
Police come. It happened at my car, so they asked me to come down to the station so they could fingerprint my car. I go into the station, and then they bring me back. Did you see the guy? No. Are you sure? Absolutely. Right. We go sit down at a table. Regardless of whether or not I said I saw him, they pull out a book, put it down in front of me. All right. Now this book, we start flipping through pages. It's all pictures of black men from the Central Park community that are on probation and parole. Right. And now they stop on one person in particular and they said, look at him. Was it this person?
Exactly.
Now, I know you said you didn't see him, but this person's been known to do this stuff in this community. And if you say it was him, you'd be helping us get a bad person off the streets. Right. This is the conversation I had with the police. I never again called the police after that day.
Right.
Never
Right.
again. And I got up and walked out of that police station.
Right.
And from that moment, I lost a lot of trust. Because I've grown up a skeptic because, in my house, we listen to Malcolm X, right? Louis Farrakhan, was played in my house. My father was in the Black Panthers. He was in Nation of Islam. He was in jail throughout the 80s and 90s. He served out a federal sentence. Me growing up, my mentality, my idea of police officers is not the same that you're going to find out in the suburbs or in a community of regular Americans, right? But I went to Amherst. I went to Madai, educated myself, and I was, let's try out the society and see if it really is equitable. And I'm telling you, it's not.
Right. Very true. So
So this
true.
is why we advocate so hard for getting this bill passed, as well as our other bill, fair and timely parole. And that doesn't have an age attached to it, but it's the same premise. You've been in prison 15 years. You should be able to get a fair parole hearing.
Right.
Again, we need to fully staff that parole board. It's spaces for 19 people. Most of the time, it's understaffed. But
I'm volunteering.
well, please do.
I think I should. Yeah.
Anyone
Yeah. That's an idea. That's a good idea. Yep.
can get the majority of law enforcement people off of that board and make it diverse. People that look like you, me, nurses, doctors, teachers, professional people need to vet this position.
Right.
We've got to make a change because in the African-American household, back in the 60s, they made sure that they came and they took the men out. And that left us women to try and put the man's pants on, raise children, go out and work, get an education,
Right.
and still keep track of your family. Now, once they come and take the woman out the household, because you can't do all of that
Right.
and not fall by the wayside for whatever reason.
Right.
They take the woman out. Who's there to guide the children? Who's there to direct the children? As soon as they go to school, the remedy for bad behavior is suspension. And it starts the school to prison pipeline.
Right.
I can speak from my own personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not only the mother of a daughter who's incarcerated, but I had a son that was in and out from the age he was 16 until he came home in February at the age of 39. He's had it.
Right.
They released him. He's got an essential worker's job. He's living a good life with his family. He's got a new truck. He doesn't have to go out on the corner and sell drugs anymore.
Right.
He's one that he went to the parole board and they said, okay, You free to go.
Hallelujah.
He's still on
Alhamdulillah.
parole, but he is free and he got out right up under before COVID came. It was hard for me raising 4 children by myself.
Of course. Of course.
It was, and it's going to be difficult for any human being to raise children by themselves. But my son was suspended in pre-K,
Wow.
4
Well,
years old. 4
well,
years old.
Well, the data is definitely there, that it has been very clear that the disparate rates of suspension for Black and brown children and youth versus white is just outrageous. Just outrageous. And it's back to what we were saying before, is we need lots of change in all of our systems. So they just come out worse in the very worst, in that punitive lowest system, lowest rung, lowest amount of treatment that people get treated not only inhumanely, but as if they're not human.
So I want to make this point, Vicki, because this is extremely important.
Sure.
Like
And
my brother was
too.
just
Yeah.
my brother was just released from prison back in November. When I was younger, I was in foster care. My entire family was in foster care. My mom was arrested, because she went and stole groceries because she had 7 kids and we were homeless, right? And that started off our long battle in foster care. My brother's. An older brother that passed away when he was 19 because of a drug overdose, who, going on about, school to prison pipeline.
Right.
He was arrested in school at the age of 18 because he had a dime of weed in his, at the age of 16 because he had a dime of weed in his locker. And then that started his go about with drug court. And at that point, he ran away from foster care and then, started running out in the streets and doing drugs and everything else because he was no longer in school and he had to do all these mandated programs.
Right.
My other brother, age 17, he had ran away from his foster home when he was 14, lived on the streets, got involved in crime, gangs, and everything else. He went into prison at the age of 17. He didn't receive an education in prison, right? He didn't get any special training in program or any special programs or anything like that in prison. There's no trade skills. Like, he got a few certifications for things, but even these aren't real skills that are transferable into the workforce because the idea is to not grow you and train you. So he spent 10 years cumulatively in prison with parole releases and whatnot. He maxed out with his 10-year sentence. He got out when he was 28 back in November. He's still 17 years old.
Yes.
And then that's the issue that we're dealing with, because he was frozen in time.
Right.
Yes.
They didn't educate him. He didn't live a life. He didn't learn how to socialize. He didn't learn any of that. So 17 years old, he's 28 now. He's still 17 years old in the head. So that's what really contributes to our recidivism rate, right? Because now he gets out of jail, he doesn't know how to do anything, but the same stuff he was doing when he was 17 that got him locked up in the first place.
Right.
Right. And now the responsibility is on Donna's hands and my hands and all these family members' hands to try and save him again.
Right.
Right. Because at the end of the day, we have to use our own resources to do that. There's no post-release services saying, okay, let's make sure you have your food stamps applied for before you hit that bus. Let's make sure you have more than $40 in your pocket before you're released from a state penitentiary. Let's make sure you have a rooming house set up for you already, so you're not living on the streets or in the Salvation Army, the city mission. None of that stuff is happening for these people coming out of jail. Right. But then we sit in the Erie County budget hearing and you hear Sheriff Howard's deputy or undersheriff saying about all of these programs that we need to spend this $100 million a year that we're getting because our county's providing these post-release services to inmates coming out of the county jails. And they're not getting jobs training. They're not getting post-release services. They don't even know how to file for food stamps or Section 8 when they come out of jail. And those are things that will stop people from reoffending and really make our community safer.
Exactly.
Well, so many changes needed at every level of that system. No question about it. And I just want to take a little bit of a shift when we think about releasing, releasing aging people and also releasing people after, what they've experienced in prison. So we've just said there's all kinds of ways that people get mistreated and abused and at least neglected and, and most likely abused as well. And I'm thinking about the people in Guantanamo. So I know, Martin, that is a particular area of interest for you. So the people in Guantanamo, why don't you tell a little the story of people in Guantanamo there in Cuba?
Well, let me back up a little bit.
Sure.
About I was talking to Chuck earlier just today,
Sure.
and he was down there at the Wednesday thing in front of the
good.
holding center, and they let somebody out in a T-shirt and nothing else.
Not again, no.
Yeah, no coat, no phones, no money. So they called somebody in who came over and picked them up, and so that worked out okay. But I mean, it just, okay, you're free to go. Goodbye. It's, but I wanted to ask Donna a question. Did you say that citizens could be on the parole board? Because we certainly should do that if we can.
Of course. Matter of fact, we at RAPP are going to be circulating information for people. If you are interested, if you know someone that is interested.
Yeah,
Yes,
get everybody,
please.
all your friends.
Give it
get
to
more.
us, and we'll be sure to help publicize it. We'll send it all around.
Definitely will.
Definitely happy to send that everywhere. Yes.
We need representation for sure, 100%.
Yes, people who are thinking differently, because this system, we know it doesn't work. You see it from the results. Go ahead. What were you
This would be
gonna say?
something, yeah. And then a little thing about Jaleel Muntakim. He skipped a parole hearing so that Seth Hayes could have a chance, and Seth got out.
Yes.
And Seth was, which was just darling and wonderful. But Seth was suffering from diabetes and did not have, they really did not help him. And the equipment he got finally later wasn't installed correctly. It just kind of, and that relates to another question. Why aren't there more malpractice cases brought against the state on behalf of the prisoners?
Right.
Well, because there's civil cases. You can just recover money, and the prisoners' lives are worth nothing to start with. So what?
We just filed a class action suit in reference to the Adirondack facility.
Okay.
In that beautiful country, they took a juvenile home for boys and put elderly gentlemen in there. It was not equipped for the elderly. They had vending machines in there. The living situation was not conducive. They were transferring them without testing them. This, I called it the mausoleum. It's a place to send our elderly. But I want to backtrack to what you were saying about the parole board commissioners. Now, they had so many ones on there that were law enforcement that didn't want anybody released.
Right.
One woman applied and got the position. She was instrumental in releasing Jose Saldana, our executive director at RAPP, after serving 37 years in exemplary, no finer human being other than my friend, my beloved Robert Seth Hayes these are kings.
They are. What a wonderful man he was. Yes.
When she did that, the whole parole board seemed like they turned against her. They made her life a living hell to the point where she gave up the position after a couple years.
Really?
That's how they do. So, we need some more people in there that can make it a diverse parole board.
On the way. Just send it along. We'll publicize it like mad. Yes. So there are things, and I do feel like we've seen so many changes that says to me, change is going to come. So these changes that we need, we're going to make them happen, because I don't know. They see everybody let up when Obama came in. We didn't let up at the Western New York Peace Center, but we're certainly not letting up now, and none of you all are. So, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Gitmo, because to me, it's another example of political prisoners. So we were just talking about Black Panthers who tried to serve their community. You can argue about different things that happen. I don't say there weren't some things. Fred, talk about Fred. But anyway, but we're gonna get because I want to go. These people in. Oh, well, you tell us. You tell us.
Oh, okay.
Martin.
Well, no, my interest in Guantanamo is more from a legal point of view. But I mean, I know some things about it, and that is there were at the high point 800 people there who were supposedly the worst of the worst, and now it's down to 40 who are, I guess, the worst of the worst of the worst.
Except they're not.
Except they're not. Right.
Except the only. Go ahead.
But and why? And then some people have been cleared for release. So I think if you're not going to release them, you should at least open the cell door, let them walk around, get some occupational training at the McDonald's there, learn how to, interact with the people, work in the gift shop where they sell,
Well,
that would go against the system. The system is working just the way they designed it. They designed for it to fail. That's why when your brother was incarcerated, Myles, there was no programs or no services. They wanted him to come back. On my son's first incarceration, when he was released, the CO said to him, "We'll be seeing you back, Miss Robinson's baby boy."
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
But one of the things I wanted to say,
it's job security is what I called it before. Like, they purposely have it so that they fail, so they can ensure that they come back. And the prison system, and people don't like this because it's not palatable, but the prison system is a social welfare program for Caucasian people. All right. And it's built off the backs of Black and brown families.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
The other thing about Guantanamo, which is again I think in some ways similar, is, I mean, the people who were incarcerated there, it was haphazard because they were giving monetary
bonuses.
rewards. Yeah, bonuses and rewards for people in Afghanistan and elsewhere. For people,
Pakistan,
for people that they said, "Hey, bring us a terrorist, we'll give you cash."
Yeah, and they dropped leaflets out of the planes.
Money. They're just taking the neighbor, the guy who's sitting there at the gate post. You're coming with me. So there was no rhyme or reason. There's no reason to charge, and this is why so many of the people weren't charged, because there was no good reason. But they treated them so heinously that they're afraid to let them go. That's what happens.
I think that's true.
They don't dare let them go until and the injustice come to the surface of the ridiculousness and the heinousness of the way they've been treated for no reason at all.
Right.
And beside the cost of like $1 million, isn't it? $1 million per. Somebody told me recently, just an astronomical cost for incarcerating them because of our guilt for locking them up.
Right. And then there were some people from East Turkestan who were being oppressed by the Chinese. So they fled, and they fled into West Turkestan, now known as Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and so on.
Right.
So they were strange people, and a lot of those people were fingered and sent over. And like, what? If we wanted to fight, we would just stay home. We would stay home and fight.
Right.
We want to get out of here. So, but then the U.S. thought, well, these guys, China says they're terrorists. We say they're terrorists too. Why should we say, no, they're fleeing terrorism? No, they're terrorists. So we underscored the Chinese effort to do genocide, really, on the people in East Turkestan, which is now called something like the Xinjiang Autonomous Province of China. They did it to Tibet. Whatever happened to Tibet, 20 years ago, is happening here in East Turkestan now. Where it's not called, nobody calls it East Turkestan, but there was a big Turkestan divided by East and West. East was China, West was Russia, and then the Russian one was split up into multiple countries like Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. So.
But it's the same issue of people. It's really just about cha-ching, as we were actually talking about that with police, that people, they get their overtime for going to court. There's all these ways that people will profit monetarily.
Right.
And then the weight of the system perpetuates the injustice. then the injustice of the system perpetuates that injustice.
Right. That you can't
And
look
that's
at
the
it
same.
because, yeah. And we got into Guantanamo, if you remember, and you probably don't, back in the Spanish-American War, when Teddy Roosevelt went over and fought on the side of the Cubans to free them from Spain. We were pals. We were military allies with the Cubans.
Mm-hmm.
And we promised to protect them. We were a protectorate. They were a protectorate.
Of course, we have had a blockade now for over 50 years.
Well, right. So they're violating the terms of the lease. Even says we're going to protect you people.
Right.
It was written in 1903. So at that time, we were all, glorious and flowers and cookies and stuff like that, which were violating the terms of the lease. And the lease, when I first saw it, it's only 2 pages, 3 pages. It's not these 100-page leases. They didn't have computers. You just would write them out.
Right.
Right. So very simple, and it's not hard to find. And we just don't do anything.
Well, we have so much work to do, but I think the idea of what is being done in the criminal. I mean, I keep calling it the criminal injustice system.
Well, yeah,
because it's criminal what's happening to people. It's criminal.
Yeah, but don't ignore foreign policy and what we're doing overseas. Yeah, no, we're the biggest state sponsor of terrorism. No, not Iran, as we are.
Right.
Yeah, and Cuba is just the first offshore base, but we've got Okinawa. The people in Okinawa are up in arms. Get the heck out of here.
We have about
South
900.
Korea.
Right. Well, one of the things that I like to bring up is money for life, money for living, money for people and the planet, and not for Fear Inc. So I call it Fear Inc. The efforts to intimidate, control, incarcerate,
Colonize.
or even kill or colonize.
Oh yeah.
Just
So
intimidate.
I saw a documentary on Guantanamo Bay a few years back, and I saw, like, for one, it's not similar to American prisons because it's on territory outside the United States, so they don't have to follow the same laws, and they're not imprisoning American citizens. So, most of the time they're not imprisoning American citizens, so they're allowed to do whatever they want because they're operating on the terms of war, right? However, like at Guantanamo Bay, some of the things that you're going to find is actual acts of torture going on, to the extent that people are being denied the ability, because a large in part the people incarcerated there are Muslims, right? So they're denied the ability to pray. A lot of times they don't know which direction to pray in. The lights in some of their cells, from what I understand, are on 24 hours a day with no access to sunlight and no clocks, so they don't know what time it is. In addition to the fact that they play heavy metal music at very loud volumes to further torture and cause mental illness and harm on those people that are incarcerated there. So like there's multiple forms of just rights being violated that would even go against like the Geneva Convention. Oh, absolutely. In a time of war. Absolutely. That are being committed at Guantanamo that, unfortunately, because we are the United Nations, we don't have any check and balance, globally to put us in our place.
Right. No, it's even worse. So it's even worse. Absolutely.
But Cuba was picked mostly for convenience, so people could fly there and to fly back. Don't have to fly over to Afghanistan to interrogate people. Just a convenience.
And we did have a lot of other, black sites where we were holding people, and we very likely still do. It's not been in the news lately.
It's really nice.
But yeah.
And then people say the Constitution doesn't apply there or something like that. It was beyond the reach of the law, which is ridiculous. It is ridiculous.
Well, there's international law.
Well, even just our own U.S. law. And the Bill of Rights applies to Guantanamo. The Bill of Rights is a restraint on what the federal government can do. When we passed the Constitution, the state said, we're not signing that. Sorry. We're not signing that. You got to fix it. So they had to add these amendments to restrain what the federal government can do. And that's what the Bill of Rights is. It's a restraint on what the federal government can do. So that means everywhere the federal government does something, it's got to live within the Bill of Rights. So anybody.
Let me ask you this. So, Martin, do you feel that in our U.S. penal system here that the Bill of Rights is being followed?
Let's see. I mean, probably not.
I'm going to say probably not, because first of all, halt solitary for one thing. You know, solitary confinement, which we
That's a
started
good
talking
question,
about a
though.
little, is that is cruel and unusual punishment. We know
Oh,
that.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
the worst kind of torture that you can. You know, I mean, they're the stories about people need other people. There's no question what it does to
Right.
people's mental health. That long being isolated.
Yeah, sensory deprivation leads to
Right.
insanity. We know
Right.
that.
Right.
But cruel and unusual, the point of that was because you need the consent of the governed. We say, oh, the people consent. That's the basis for the legitimacy of the government, the consent of the governed. And if the governed think you're cruel, you won't get their consent. And a way to identify cruelty is if it's, just one or two guys doing weird shit. So the unusual part is to help you identify cruel behavior. I think that's the way I see it.
Well, I know everything we've heard and seen.
Right. So the behavior is allowed to be cruel as long as it's not unusual.
If it's common, then how could it be cruel? Yeah, if everybody's doing it.
Well, that's an interesting. I never
so
thought
solitary confinement isn't cruel and unusual because it's not unusual.
It's so common.
Because it's happening all over the place.
Maybe.
God.
I don't know.
There you
Talk
go.
about circular
So it's not
reasoning.
violating the Bill of Rights based on that argument.
Talk about circular reasoning. Ooh, it's so diabolical.
Well, I mean, if you let it go too
damn
long.
it, Martin, damn it.
Yeah.
Well, Donna, I do want to tell you, I met Pete Seeger. I saw Pete Seeger for the first time at the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility.
Oh.
Because my parents were living not far from there at the time, and I know Pete Seeger. That's how Chuck knew Pete Seeger. That's how he ended up coming to the Western New York Peace Center, being our speaker for our annual dinner. Was the last
Big
public
event.
concert he did before he passed. But because he had the compassion, because he knew this is a terrible system, and as you said, I want to say it's a broken system, but I fully recognize what you said. It is a jobs program. It is a jobs program, and thank you. Oh, let us mention this. I am feeling happy about some things. There have been some good decisions that are being made, so we're going to keep the pressure on. But you want to talk about this latest one? About the prison that Biden has just signed off on changing the, is it ending the contracts?
They're
phasing
phasing out the federal private prison system.
Right.
Yeah.
Phasing it.
So
out. Okay,
and I would imagine, I didn't do all the research on it, but I would imagine that it's probably got a lot to do with the actual prison population going down and them just closing the federal private prisons. But
hallelujah. Alhamdulillah.
Let's take it. Yeah.
We take it. We absolutely. That's one of the
Yeah,
worst.
yeah.
The private, makes it even worse. If it wasn't bad enough as it was, the private prisons, the stories about the private that come out of the private prisons. Oh my God.
Getting the profit motive in there. Yeah, let's do that.
I mean, and it's already in there, but it's in there so heavily then. So that then instead of $1 for a meal, maybe it's only 50 cents for the meal. That people are not given,
Well, I heard that a lot of times what happens in the private prisons, I think it was Alabama or Louisiana, these southern states are the ones that are primarily the ones that still hold the private prison system. I think they still have them in like North Carolina, Virginia, and places like that too.
Right.
But a lot of times what they'll get is like for a meal, they'll get like a $10 stipend for a meal per inmate or something like that. And
spend 50 cents.
Yes, because they get to keep everything they save. So then they can use it to reappropriate it for bonuses, for salaries, for whatever it is that they want to spend it on. So the idea is that they get the contract at the $7-8 per meal or whatever it is, and then they drive costs down as much as they can, which is why like their meals are pretty much all soy based and of no nutritional value, and it's literally just slop. It's literally slop.
Yeah, and the phone,
they
the phone
cut
is
costs in all
another
these areas for that reason.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes. that's
phone
another
is
thing.
another ripoff in
Right, right.
letter, communicate, and the commissary stuff also. All that stuff is just
Right,
wrong.
right.
I'm confident it is, without even really
Well,
knowing. But phone is for sure.
So
Yeah.
we have a lot to do, but I want to say, Donna, I really appreciate all the work that you do, and we need to get behind those two bills. So, if we've publicized it different ways, but if you want to give me your latest research the numbers of the bills of this most recent iteration,
I put them in the chat. Vicki, elder parole is S15. They've been assigned new numbers for this session. And fair and timely parole is S1415. One has a number in assembly, but we've yet to get one assigned.
Well, I'm sorry because of the way it's set up in the studio. I don't know enough to how to even access the chat while we're doing this. So what is it again? And people at home can write it down too. Go ahead.
Elder Parole Act,
Right.
S period 15, and fair and timely parole,
Mm-hmm.
S period 1415.
S period 14, 15. And the S, it's just, the other is just
Senate.
S15.
S is for Senate. If
And
that's
it's
in
just
Senate,
Senate 15
yes.
is the first, is the Elder Parole Act.
Elder parole.
Yeah,
It
so-
has like 3 zeros in front of it, but
Good.
we negate those, so it's just 15.
Right.
And on the website, New York State, Senate.gov, you can look at the bills, you can read them in the entirety. You can also be put on the list to be alerted when the bills change. Right now, there's a little hiccup with the Crimes and Committee chairperson,
Uh-huh.
but we should have that ironed out and shortly so that we can really get these bills going. They're so concerned with the budget right now, but what they fail to realize is the cost that it is to maintain someone behind bars,
Right.
especially an elderly person. You're looking at anywhere
Right.
from $100,000 to $300,000 a year.
Right.
Let that person come home. That's revenue that you can put back into the communities where you kidnapped them from.
Right.
Put
Tell it.
jobs there so that the people don't have to sell drugs, don't have to hang out on the corner. And that'll cut down on a lot of this.
Right.
A lot of you have
So
to give them hope.
the average cost the average cost of incarceration federally, I think, is about $37,000. The average cost in New York State is $167,000 a year, and that's not even considering somebody's elder or any other type of medical care they have to go through. It's on average $167,000 a year. And if you do the math, because the numbers don't exist in Erie County, we're spending $100 million a year in Erie County, and on average, we're incarcerating 500 to 600 people a day. Like on average, right? So when you do the math, we're spending roughly $185,000 to $200,000 a year in Erie County alone, which is over the state average and several times over the national average is what we're spending here. And when you look at the total like county budget, in total, I think it's $1.4 billion is what we're spending in Erie County in total, and $100 million of that, almost 10% of our total budget is going towards jailing people, right? And another comparison I like to make, if we're looking at $200,000 a year, that's the cost of a 4-year education at Harvard. So for what we're spending to put a young Black or brown person in prison in Erie County for 1 year, we could be putting kids through an entire 4-year education at an Ivy League school.
Wow. Wow. I hope you write those numbers down. We'll put them up. We'll put
I
them
got
up.
you.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Good. Because people need to know. I mean, and there's everything that doesn't work about it. Because back to, I can't help saying, abusers pay a price. That toxic masculinity comes very costly. There's nothing happy about it, and people will pay for that. And they pay at home with their domestic violence and their broken family. They pay inside themselves because they're still, people have a heart. They just do, or you're not alive. So there's even when people can be in denial, but you know what? There's that still small voice, no matter how faint, it's still there. So, or, there's all it goes around, comes around. There's just every kind of a different way that we pay, and we pay, certainly the biggest is the people who directly pay and their families. But we as a community pay so dearly. So dearly. Anyway, we're sort of drawing on towards almost over with the show. So I know, I know it's gone
This is
quickly.
good.
It's been great. We're not quite over. So, but we do have time for everybody to give some final thoughts. So just sort of bottom line, Donna.
Oh, Donna, I have a question for you.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
If you visit a legislature or representatives, do you need a ride there, or would you be willing to have someone like me go along with you, or you already got people who do that, so you're fine?
It was Zoom,
Well,
wasn't it?
We had a Advocacy Day rally by Zoom.
Oh.
We're not really going out.
Oh,
but
really? Okay.
Yes, we sent out information. We had a training.
Okay.
We had like 600 people RSVP this morning.
Okay.
And we got to speak to some of the senators or their chiefs of staff to try and persuade them. I put Senator Kennedy and Senator Sean Ryan's name in the chat because they have not co-sponsored any of the bills.
Okay.
You know what? I think we need to have a town hall. We're going to have a
we are
town
planning
hall
that.
on this, and for the state legislators, we're going to specially invite them at a time that is convenient to them and have some panel discussion and then ask them. So that's a plan.
Well, Jerome Wright has already set up around the 8th of February. We're working on February the 8th.
Is what?
The
Yeah.
8th of February, we are planning on having a town hall. We haven't gotten all the particulars, but this is what we are aiming for. What we did today, Senator Kennedy sent some of his staff people. Sean Ryan sent his chief of staff person, but they were involved in meetings, so they didn't show up. They know me personally. They know my voice.
They do.
They know my story. I mean, I have cried and snotted all over Tim Kennedy's jacket last year when we were in Albany, telling him my story, other family members telling them their story. He gave us our word that he would look at the bills. Well, now another year's passed and we're in a pandemic. And I can't express enough why it's imperative that we put a release mechanism in place now, or more lives will be lost. Governor Cuomo just put out an article yesterday saying that people in prison won't even be considered for the vaccine if they wanted to take it. So
well, Donna, we're happy to co-sponsor if you want to. If you want us to, we have a good Zoom account too. If you need one, let me know so we can talk some more. And
yes.
Okay, so that's something but people can be tweeting, calling, emailing them, everything. Learning
studying.
too. Oh, learning and studying, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I think
And
some of it is a pretty
website.
plain matter of principle.
Yes, and
It's
it's
a matter
all
of
on our website, RAPP, R-A-P-P, campaign, all one word.
Yep.
You type that in, you hit
You'll
go,
get
and
everything.
it sends you right there. You can see the press. You can
Sure.
see what's happening,
Right.
everything. You can sign up for our membership meetings to get involved. I
Sure.
mean, right now we're not going out as much and
Right.
rallying because of COVID and the fact that it's colder than a witch's kiss up here. The last time I was out was around Christmas time. Before Christmas, we were caroling, believe it or
Right.
not.
Yes, we were.
We were
we were
caroling.
doing it.
But
We were
no,
doing
once
it.
the weather breaks, we will be out. Thank God for Chuck. He is relentless. One day it was freezing last year. He and I were the only people out there in front of the holding center. He is so faithful. I love him. Chuck Cohane, he's an icon. He served his time.
Yes.
Thank God that he's here home with us because he is making a difference.
Yes, he is. So any last words, Martin?
Oh, yeah. And what should we do about Governor Cuomo not signing the HALT bill, which he looks like has no intention of signing?
Okay, so I think that we need to also, nag
Work
him,
on that.
tweet him,
On that
call
topic.
him, everything
Okay.
else. And
Okay.
we will, that's another thing that we could have a town hall on. But,
Right.
um,
On
Maybe
the
we should take
website,
some
there are
notes
the
from the
phone
other
numbers.
municipalities and march
It's
on
on our-
the governor's mansion.
And so
Okay.
now,
We've done
Myles, yes, all of this has been ongoing. Myles, your
Right.
last word you want to share?
Well, I was saying maybe we should march on the governor's mansion, but it sounds like Donna said we already did that. But
Well, we're going to make it happen. There's other ways too. You know, we're going
but
to.
I think my personal thought always, because I feel like everybody's got a good message and everybody's got to bring their message so that everyone can hear what's going on.
Right.
My message is always we got to think local.
Right.
I eat
Right.
local, you think local, right? Because all these issues that Donna's talking about, all these issues that Martin's talking about, all these issues that you and I are talking about, they exist here in Erie County,
Oh,
and there's things that we can focus on in our small community to really
Right.
make an impact for those people that live in our areas, right? So like when we talk about ending solitary confinement, you know what I mean? We have a sheriff who's not running for re-election this year, and we know that a sheriff has complete control over the Erie County jails. They've got almost autonomous decision on how they can run that jail,
Right.
with a very small overlay of state regulations. So we need to focus on those types of positions and that type of power locally, so that we can make a huge impact and a huge difference for our people.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you all so much. You've been great. It's been a very compelling show, and we have a lot of work to do, but we are doing it, and we're going to lift every voice, and we are going to make it happen. We're getting it done in 2021. So thank you. We've been together. We've been talking peace in truth and love.
Power to the people.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
I love you guys. Take care.
We love
Thank
you
you.
all. We'll